The aftermath of World War I saw a surge in industrial production and economic activity. The war had boosted American industries, and the country was left relatively unscathed by the physical destruction that Europe had experienced. Innovations in manufacturing, particularly in the automobile industry, led by Henry Ford's assembly line techniques, made products more affordable and accessible to the general public. The production of affordable cars, like the Model T, revolutionized transportation. The availability of new and exciting consumer goods, along with an increase in disposable income, led to a rise in consumer spending. This culture of consumption was fueled by advertising and the desire for modern conveniences. The stock market, particularly during the latter part of the 1920s, saw a surge in speculation. People were investing in stocks and borrowing money to invest in the hope of making quick profits. This speculative behavior contributed to the stock market bubble that eventually burst in 1929. The availability of credit allowed more Americans to make purchases on installment plans, further boosting consumer spending. The 1920s saw a shift towards more liberal social attitudes, including changes in fashion, music, and entertainment. The Jazz Age emerged, characterized by new styles of music and dance. The prohibition of alcohol led to the rise of illegal bars known as speakeasies, contributing to a lively underground culture. The decade also marked progress for women's rights, including gaining the right to vote in 1920. Flappers, young women who embraced a more liberated lifestyle, became emblematic of this era. However, this era of prosperity came to an abrupt end with the stock market crash of 1929, which marked the beginning of the Great Depression. The economic collapse that followed had profound and lasting effects on the United States and the world. It was October 24, 1929 that investors began to panic as stock prices fell dramatically. The market saw a record number of shares being traded, and the decline in prices led to widespread financial losses. The panic selling on Black Thursday was a clear indication of the growing instability and uncertainty in the stock market, which eventually culminated in the devastating crash just a few days later on Black Tuesday. John Rockefeller aimed to offer public declarations and viewpoints as a means to provide reassurance and guidance to the general public. He sought to pacify individuals and discourage them from selling their stocks. However, these efforts did not yield the desired results. The significant stock market crash that marked the beginning of the Great Depression occurred on October 29, 1929. On Black Tuesday, the New York Stock Exchange experienced a massive and sudden sell-off of stocks. The stock prices plummeted, causing panic among investors. The market lost a significant portion of its value in a single day. Investors who had borrowed money to invest in stocks faced substantial losses as stock prices collapsed. Many people lost their life savings, and some were left with debt that they couldn't repay due to the sharp decline in asset values. As stock prices fell, banks that had invested heavily in the stock market faced severe financial losses. Additionally, banks that had lent money to investors for stock purchases were unable to recover their loans, leading to a wave of bank failures. The crash had a cascading effect on the economy. Consumer spending decreased as people lost confidence in their financial situation. Businesses began to cut production and lay off workers, leading to widespread unemployment and reduced economic activity. The stock market crash and subsequent economic downturn in the United States had a global impact. International trade suffered as demand for goods decreased. The economic contagion spread to other countries, contributing to a worldwide depression. On these dark days, thousands of Americans lost their homes. Hoovervilles were makeshift communities of homeless people living in tents, shacks, or other rudimentary structures. The name Hooverville was a criticism of President Herbert Hoover's handling of the economic crisis. Many people felt that Hoover's policies and actions were insufficient to address the widespread suffering caused by the Great Depression, and they blamed him for their dire circumstances. The term was not only a reflection of the anger and frustration that people felt towards President Hoover, but it also symbolized the larger issues of poverty, unemployment, and inequality that were prevalent during that time. These shanty towns were visible reminders of the human toll of the economic crisis and the failure of the existing social and economic systems to provide for those in need. In the aftermath of the crash, governments and central banks attempted to stabilize the economy through various measures. However, the damage was severe, and the Great Depression persisted throughout the 1930s. The 1932 United States presidential election was a pivotal moment in American history, and Franklin D. Roosevelt's victory over incumbent President Herbert Hoover marked a significant turning point in the nation's response to the Great Depression. Franklin D. Roosevelt, a Democrat, campaigned on a platform that promised a new deal for the American people. He emphasized the need for bold and proactive government intervention to address the economic challenges brought about by the Great Depression. Roosevelt's New Deal proposed a series of programs and policies aimed at providing relief, recovery, and reform to the struggling economy and society.
I pledge myself to a new deal for the American people.
During his presidency, Roosevelt introduced a wide range of initiatives and programs under the New Deal. Emergency Banking Act aimed to stabilize the banking system by declaring a nationwide bank holiday, allowing only solvent banks to reopen. Civilian Conservation Corps provided employment to young men by putting them to work on public lands and conservation projects. Works Progress Administration created jobs for unemployed individuals, funding public works projects such as roads, bridges, and public buildings. Social Security Act established a system of social insurance, providing financial assistance to retirees, disabled individuals, and the unemployed. Tennessee Valley Authority aimed to develop the Tennessee Valley region by providing electricity, flood control, and economic development. National Industrial Recovery Act sought to promote fair labor practices, establish codes of competition, and stimulate industrial recovery. Securities and Exchange Commission was established to regulate the securities industry and protect investors from fraudulent practices. The Great Depression had profound social effects, including widespread poverty, homelessness, and despair. It also led to a revaluation of economic and financial policies, prompting reforms and regulatory measures to prevent a similar crisis in the future. However, Roosevelt's New Deal marked a significant shift in the role of the federal government in addressing economic and social challenges. It aimed to provide direct relief to those in need, stimulate economic recovery, and implement long-term reforms to prevent future economic crises. While the New Deal faced criticism and debate, it had a profound impact on American society, helping to alleviate the worst effects of the Great Depression and laying the foundation for modern social welfare and economic policies.